to the current segment is Merlin Vegitech as well in the space of agri-tech. I wouldn't want to take too much more time. We'd like to introduce our key speaker and panel member for the day, Mr. Christian Stevenson, the CEO of Desert Control. And I'd like to sort of move the virtual mic to him so to have the opportunity to speak a few words, and we can start picking his brain, his very intelligent brain on some key topic areas. Just going to stop my screen here and pass the mic on to Ole. Ole, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I think the topic of the day, food security, is also a very strong topic that has gotten increasing awareness through the last year, especially following COVID-19, and figuring out around the world that dependency on complex logistical value chains for food security is more fragile than we may have thought before. So it's definitely a rising topic around the world for all nations, and finding ways to become more sustainable and securing local production of food, etc., is really an important part of the dialogue. So when we talk about food security, it is simply impossible not to talk about soil, because nearly everything that we eat has a dependency on soil. In addition to that, our soil ecosystem is also vital for biodiversity. It's vital to address water scarcity and to balance our climate in general. We'll look about sort of a soil on a global level. Sometimes we hear a comparison of Earth being compared to an orange, where its peel represents the topsoil, this vital soil that we are dependent on for growing food, supporting green vegetation, etc. But in fact, it's more like an apple. When you think about the dimension of this super thin skin of topsoil that we have around the world is utterly vital for nearly everything we eat, for the clothes that we wear, and the air we breathe. And then we can ask the question, what is really the current state of global topsoil? And it's quite scary to just start to read up on this. If we read reports from the United Nations, the IPCC, etc., we can see that more than 20% of Earth's fertile land is already degraded. And if we take this number and isolate it to agricultural land, the number is even higher. And you'll see that is even above 30% of agricultural land that is suffered soil degradation and desertification, in fact, in many places. According to the United Nations, we see that the loss of arable land is not slowing down either. 12 million hectares of fertile land perish to desertification annually. If we break that down to a daily level or even down to the hour, it's good to break down sort of those 12 million hectares into something we can recognize. And if you take the size of a football pitch, the areas of land that we lose is actually equal to 2,000 football pitches every hour. So imagine you take those football pitches and you align them after each other and you drive along them to just keep up with the speed of desertification. You have to drive at 210 kilometers per hour. That's the impact of desertification around the world. Of course, this is spread around the world, so we are not seeing it. A lot of it is happening from underneath, out of sight, out of mind. But the total impact of this is really quite tremendous. And this is happening in parallel with the global population also growing rapidly. More food will be needed to support this growing population over the next 40 years than our planet has produced over the last 500 years. And growing all this food also requires water, lots of water, really. If you take the look at the water footprint for various types of foods, I mean, if you take a hamburger, the water footprint for such a meal is more than 2,000 liters of water. A simple slice of bread is more than 80 liters of water, and just a cup of coffee is more than 130 liters. water. I mean, just for your morning coffee. And if we look around the world on the global situation for water and water scarcity, we know that 1.8 billion people is predicted to suffer absolute water scarcity within 2025. And already today, more than 70% of all available fresh water in the world is already consumed by agriculture to produce the food that we need. And with more soil turning to sand and the loss of arable land, we will need even more water to simply produce the food that we are producing today. So this is the situation we need to address. And just to look a little bit at the solution that we at Desert Control have been focused on. So we have looked at ways to really improve water retention in sandy soils and reclaiming arable land, making a desert area even become arable land. And research really shows that clay-rich soils, wherever in the world, they retain more water and nutrients everywhere. But getting clay to be worked into the soil, however, is quite difficult, right? I sometimes make a pizza on a Saturday, and I think even getting the flour into the dough there can be a tricky thing. So just imagine getting sticky clay evenly distributed throughout sand or soil. That is quite a challenge. So what we've done is that we have invented a way to turn clay into a liquid. This liquid is nearly as thin as water, and we break down the layers of the clay to its smallest denominator, so that it, by the force of gravity simply, can penetrate the topsoil level and sink into the ground and bind with the sand particles throughout that soil. And in that way, it creates a new soil structure that retains water like a sponge, even in a desert environment. So we've been working on this technology for a number of years. And the last 2 years, we've been focusing all our efforts around validating the impact of this. And we've been doing that here in the UAE. In collaboration with ICBA, International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, who has been an independent research facility for us to do third-party validation of the technology. What we see on the screen here is the transformation of a piece of land out there that went from more or less dune sand and desert sand that you see on the one hand side, and 5 months later we see pearl millets here. We also did some crops like watermelons and zucchinis, and we got quite a lot of attention throughout the world, coverage from BBC and CNN about this project of creating this green oasis out of desert sand. We even had the opportunity to work together with International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, who are also involved Red Crescent, to make sure that the fruits and vegetables reached communities and people who needed them in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemics. That was also a wonderful social impact part that came out of this, which gave us even more happiness in creating hope for a better future for people and planet. So we are focused really in these three areas and sort of accelerating climate action. If you look at the degradation of soil around the world and those 20 to 30% of degraded lands that we have already, that actually holds the potential to offset and bind up to 5.5 gigatons of CO2 with the soil's carbon's sequestering capabilities. It holds the key to feed our planet responsibly and drive food security as the topic of the day. And I think it's important when we look at food security to always remember that we need to balance that together with combating water scarcity. Because one of the biggest hurdles to food security in the future will be the limitation that water provides. So we need to look at this holistically. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and open it up for questions and discussions.
Thank you very much, Ole. That's been very comprehensive run through. I'm sure there will be a few questions. I think that just the first question that I guess probably going to get asked a lot is, we have a question already asking if we can share your presentation. So I'm not sure if that's something that you open up for, or
Absolutely.
okay, perfect. So we can share Oli's presentation to those who request for it. Just coming back to the technology that you've that's actually revolutionizing. We speak a lot about vertical farming and agri-tech in terms of growing as much as possible in a limited amount of space. And what you're doing is really, if I may, reclaiming the land that was potentially probably thousands of years ago, where it was actually farmable land, if I'm not mistaken. And but what have your challenges been? I mean, you've been, while agri-tech and food security have been sort of a buzzword for probably just people has gathered awareness just for the last I would say probably a couple of years, but talk has been going on about it for decades, and it's just maybe probably unfortunately that it's getting that kind of prominence that it is right now. But what have your challenges been since you've been developing this technology, from what I understand, for quite some time, in developing something that is actually now, I guess you've reached already the second stage of development, and some great relationships going on. So just wanted to understand some challenges that you've faced.
Yeah. Let me address some of the points that you bring up first, and then I'll get also around to some of the challenges, because it is true that food security and technologies to address this has been kind of a buzzword for many years. And I think the same goes for technologies to combat climate change. It's been a buzzword, and it's being talked about on governmental levels, on political levels. But then I think we need to get to a stage where it's not just regulations and political discussions that are driving it, but actually where multiple technologies come together at the same time, kind of like the perfect storm here, where technologies for addressing sort of soil and soil health comes together with water technologies and ways to actually distribute the water more evenly and in a better way, together with energy sources, renewable energy, and all these things, because that goes together with building also at the same time knowledge and education about sustainable land management and holistically managing these ecosystems. And I think that is why things take a lot of time before they really ramp up, and then you see this exponential scaling once these technologies comes together. And that is what I believe that we are seeing in the more near future here. Also, when it comes to mobilizing and getting action around things like addressing food security and climate change, I think the problem about that, and the reason why it's moving slow, is that we are doing this in peace times. I mean, if we were in a war situation, we've seen how nations and the entire world is able to mobilize in a war situation. And the fact is that in many ways we are actually in a war on these areas. If you think about 2,000 football pitches, of fertile land being desertificated every hour. That's like 1.5 times the size of the UAE that we're losing every year. I mean, that's incredible, right? So that's kind of like a route to self-destruction in many ways. So I think the fact that one of the things with COVID-19 and the global situation as well now is making us also wake up a little bit more to the situation that we are all very interconnected in a fragile system on this world as Earthlings, and I believe that's going to be helping us to accelerate this going forward as well. When it comes to some of the challenges, I think those are the challenges that we see are the challenges that any entrepreneur will see as well, because most entrepreneurial ideas, they can be extremely brilliant, and I don't ever see something fail because of the idea. It's not the idea that makes or breaks it. It is actually the ability to bring that idea and turn that into reality and execute and getting things done. That's the challenging part. For us, some of the challenge that we see is that we have requests coming from all over the world while we are still, in a startup stage. Some of the challenges is to stay focused as well, to focus on doing the right things at the right time. Because if you spread yourself too thin, it doesn't matter how big your dream is and that you're drowning in opportunities from all over the world. If you're drowning in opportunities, the result is still going to be the same. I mean, the outcome of drowning is not something you want to have happening. So I think it's about really staying focused, making sure that you have a big vision, but you cannot be living in that big vision in day-to-day life, because that's living in a daydream. So you have to be very focused, start small, and then execute very, very quickly in a systematic way. And then think about everything that you're doing in the way of designing the execution of your idea to build it so that they can execute and grow in an exponential way. So that's really the key challenges that I see for initiatives like this. And then it's also about, being humble and understanding that, whatever you do, you cannot do it alone, right? You need, within the company, you need different people for different things. Basically, you need at least 4 key things. You need a vision and a dream, and someone who brings that to the table. You need someone who can build your vision and build the product. You need someone who can sell it. And you need someone who can look after the money and make sure that you build it in a sustainable way so that you can actually support the growth of getting your vision into the world. And then you need to understand that even companies cannot do everything alone, right? So you need to be open for partnerships, and you need to understand what things you can do and cannot do yourself. If you're not the best on everything, right, then partner, find ways to actually do this together and build ecosystems where you think about also the implementation steps of your product and of your strategy. So yeah, does that answer your question on challenges?
Definitely. I mean, it sort of highlights that the progress that has been made so far, but where we need to be, there's still a lot to be done. And I completely agree with you in terms of partnerships, not just from the technological angle, but we really need the partnerships to come in from the regulation standpoint, and some of the other entities, as you mentioned, that you're already working with the Biosaland Center as well. Hopefully these would sort of fall into place and get us to where we need to be, which is probably a lot of distance yet to be covered. We're getting a stream of questions in, so I'm going to have to run through these quickly. An interesting one, which I didn't really think about, is what are the role of information systems in food security in the future? I'm not sure if you'd like to take that one.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I think information systems are going to play a very, very important role in this. I see that's going to be the case for our company and our product of dealing with, combating desertification to transform, deserts and desertified areas into arable land. Because there is so much complexity in nature, and all this complexity you can break into data, and we see that complexity is related to the different types of soil that you address. Even in a desert is actually a complex ecosystem in many places. There are a soil ecosystem or a desert sand ecosystem, depending on what the salinity levels, the pH, the structure of mineral composition in that soil, combined with whatever you're going to cultivate there, the types of plants, sort of the soil chemistry, the soil biology, the plant biology, all these elements coming together. That's a lot of data and information systems, and to sort of build ways to both collect that data, to use that data to predict trends for the future, but also to help make products and services scalable, right? So if I'm going to create a good recipe for transforming this piece of land for those kind of crops, that's going to be different for another piece of land and another type of crops. So for that, we can use information technology and systems to actually automate and create good ways to make technologies scalable as well. And I think that's really something also that will be building these platforms for partnerships, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe for information systems, a crucial part to bring the pictures together, to understand where we are, and to give predictions about the future, and even prescriptive paths in the future as well on this, and to make products and technologies and innovations to solve the issues scalable. Because if you build systems that are very demanding in terms of individual training and complexity and stuff like that, they are not going to be scalable. You're not going to get this exponential scaling with it. But through information systems and automation, digitalization, you can really build things in a way that it can scale.
Thanks a lot. I guess that's a whole different probably discussion altogether. We can go on to it for several hours. A different question, I guess, but probably something that would be of interest to you as well. Obviously, we very lightly touched upon urban and vertical farming agriculture. We have someone who's asking, is it a good solution, especially in African countries where water is rare and population is getting bigger? I think probably we could do a side-by-side comparison with, because probably people would need to know about the water requirements of your technology as well, so that people can understand, okay, there are benefits to both.
Yeah, I think it's not an either or scenario here. I think I'm very supportive of all innovations and all technologies to do this. I mean, the interesting thing is that the footprint of a city requires, in general, 200 times the footprint of the city to support it in terms of food and basic needs. So I think vertical farming, utilizing the urban spaces that we have, is definitely a positive thing. At the same time, if you look at things in a bigger scale, if you really also want to contribute to solving other challenges, such as the impact of dust storms and lowering the ground temperatures and really greening larger spaces, capturing huge amounts of carbon in a larger scale, I think we need both, right? We need to also enable open field cultivation, and I believe very strongly in doing that in a agroecology and holistic mindset as well, where trees and agricultural development and agroforestry and these kind of things go hand in hand. I mean, even nations like in the Middle East, we have so much focus on forestry and managing that side of things as well. I think combining that and growing that into really large infrastructure projects that will be able to support both food security and climate initiatives and reducing other issues in the local community is important. I think water, as you mentioned, is also a key here. I think in an aquaponics environment or an indoor farming environment, you can reuse a lot of the water, and it's important to use technologies for that to make sure you create a circular process around things. And in open field cultivation, I mean, we still will have rain-fed agriculture. I think only 16, 17, maybe 18% of the world's agriculture is irrigated. The rest is rain-fed. So having technologies that can enable your soil to retain the water, that's also important. What we have seen in the validations together with International Center for Biosaline Agriculture is compared to control crops for open field cultivation, that we have reached something like 47% less consumption of water, whilst also improving yields and strengthening soil health and a better biodiversity system. So I think if you look at things, it's not an either or. It's a both kind of technologies, and we need even more technologies here to drive this forward. And I think we should work kind of with these things hand in hand, because some of the technologies we use for open field cultivation may also be relevant in indoor environments. In Africa, I think as well, we will, I mean, just the infrastructure building of greenhouses and all the capital needed to do that in a good way, the energy needed to cool them. I think probably we need combinations where we can move much faster by enabling open field cultivation, simple protection agriculture, and things like that.
Perfect. I mean, that really sums it up, because I think with this technology, it's important for participants to understand that there is significant water savings in the technology as well. And as you very rightly mentioned, it's not an either or. I think there should be a combination of these technologies. And as you close there, definitely, there's more to come and more involvement of other stakeholders in different kind of technologies that hopefully will sort of come together in this ecosystem, so to speak. We have an interesting one. We have Aladdin inquiring about the business model here in the region. I'm not sure if you'd like to probably just have a minute for that question. I'm not sure exactly what the question is. I think they'd like to know, okay, the financial reasoning behind it, and if it does make business sense. I think that's what the question is about.
Yeah. So to answer that, let me also just give a brief update on our current stage as well. So because we are dealing with innovations that really go deep into the soil ecosystem, and we have focused all our efforts up until this year really on validating the long-term impact and the impact and effect of the liquid clay that we are, this liquid clay compound that we are producing. So we haven't started to invest and put a lot of efforts into scaling up production capabilities and so forth before this year. So March 20th this year, we raised a small seed investment short of $5 million to start to take the next step, because then we had really good results from the independent validation done by International Center for Biosaline Agriculture. We've also continued that validation from grass families to agricultural crops. As we saw in the presentation, we did watermelon, zucchini, and pearl millets, and more on the agricultural side. And now we have, with those great results behind us, started to build production equipment to really be able to produce at scale this liquid clay and do this treatment in an effective way. So there we are developing mobile processing units. So imagine it would be a small mini factory that's being brought out to the field where we are treating it. So if this is a local farm somewhere, or a city park, or a green landscape area, we would bring this unit in and produce it on site. That allows us to source the clay and the inputs that we need as locally as possible with a good environmental footprint. And it allows us to create jobs and opportunities in the local communities as well. And our business model in the beginning, because we have to start before things are perfect, right? If you design for perfection and you never launch your product, you're never going to get off the ground. So in the beginning, we will have to have our own team operating the machines. It's just like an advanced coffee machine, like a barista machine you see in the restaurant. You need some kind of barista training to operate that in the beginning. While we are working on automating it with information systems and digital technologies, so that it becomes as easy to operate as the more nice coffee makers that we have with touch displays, and say, I need a cappuccino for this or an espresso for that, right? Once we reach that level, we will be enabling this as semi-autonomous business units, where we can build local teams around the world, like a pop-up model of a soil health mobile kitchen, engage local entrepreneurs who are passionate about making this planet green again, saving water, creating agricultural land, and so on. But in the beginning, we are doing this with our own people, with a little bit of a barista model to get the things going quickly. And there, our business model is to treat areas at a fixed price per square meter or per hectare, so to speak. But moving forward, there will be multiple ways where we will do technology licensing, we'll do indirect channels for this, etc. So I hope that answers the question on business model.
Yeah, definitely. And, the sky is the limit once you start implementing. And as you mentioned, if you start to design for perfection and don't launch, I guess you would continue the iteration, the reiteration. And, that definitely is a point, for me to jot down as well. We have Wahid who would like your opinion on the use of desalinated water. I'm assuming this is again for agricultural purposes, probably from a larger climate change perspective.
As I mentioned, I used the word the perfect storm of technology innovations coming together sort of at the same time to enable each other here. Water tech and water technologies are really advancing, and I mean we're seeing everything from extracting water from thin air to water technologies from the ground, to cleaning and recycling and reusing water, to even much more environmentally friendly ways of desalinating seawater as well. I think desalination can be an issue, and it can also be an opportunity, right? It is an issue if we are over salinating the coastal nearshore areas and stuff like that. It can be an issue if we have to use enormous amounts of energy, especially if that is fossil fuels, to actually produce that desalinated water. But even in those scenarios, if we can make do with half of the water that we otherwise would need, we're doing something good on that side. But I see great technologies also on that coming around, where you're addressing sort of the negative impacts of it. And I think on that question as well, I think I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it's about sort of finding the right combination. I think in the UAE, if you look at how DEVA is operating, for example, they are also using all these kinds of technologies and multiple elements to get to a way of delivering across the grid the right combination of water for the right cost levels, etc. And I think every nation needs to think like that, and then balance this thing with finding the most environmentally friendly and sustainable solutions. But creating water alone, if you're not taking care of that water, it's still a very, very scarce resource, right? So let's make sure we work in harmony by also making sure that whatever water we put out on the fields doesn't just trickle through them, but it remains there to provide life for plants and crops and food, and then we're going to get to the solution.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we cannot strictly say that we're opposed to desalination if it is using the right methods and using the right amount of water that we require. I think that's what's important. We're getting a lot of questions for your presentation, Ole. So I'm just, for all our participants here, I'm just going to reiterate that we will be sharing Ole's presentation along with the website and his contact details as well. I'm sure you're probably going to hound him with a lot of queries from your end. So just for all those who are inquiring on the Q&A, we will be sharing Ole's presentation as well as his the web link to his website and his contact details as well. So I'm just going to quickly close out these questions. We have another interesting question, which is probably related more to the climate than to the soil, but you're the expert, Ole. How could you plant the crop during summer from March to August? This is, I guess, specific to the Middle Eastern region, and would it be a genetic edited crop? Of course,
Yeah, I think it's related to my slide that showed March 10th till August 10th specifically. So which was open field cultivation in the UAE at the field center of International Center for Biosaline Agriculture. And how could we do that? Well, we wanted to test really things under harsh conditions. So we wanted to go with summer crops and that harsh heated period. how we could do that, I mean, first of all, I mean, the crops that we chose, we knew that were going to be somewhat challenging, but also if you look at pearl millet, is probably one of the most drought-resistant crops and very sturdy crops when it comes to withstanding heat. We did watermelons and zucchinis because they are also very sort of, once you get them really to start growing and you get this high water content into them, they are, you know, heavy consumers of water, but it also gives us a very good picture of the water savings potential, etc. So we of course chose crops that we believe would have a fair chance of actually surviving this situation. But really what it comes down to, the reason why it's such an issue with planting crops in a desert environment or an open field environment during the summer months is, one, the temperature, the air temperature is high. But the thing is that the ground temperature becomes the real issue, right? I mean, anyone who has gone to the beach on a sunny afternoon and put your bare foots on that sand, you know that thing is burning really bad. But the moment you run onto where the waves have washed up a little bit of water and a little bit of moisture, it's nice and cool immediately. Right? Or if there is some green grass somewhere, that's also where you cool down your feet. It's really the same thing in this situation. So when you are increasing the water holding capacity, the soil moisture holding ability, your temperature is going to come down dramatically in the soil as well. And that's really a key to both increasing the survival rate for plants and increasing the biodiversity, the biomass production both above ground and below ground, even within the soil. I mean, there is such an amazing ecosystem of life, really. And the moment that you don't have these peaks anymore, because you can imagine a regular, a sandy soil condition. Every time you irrigate, the moisture level will go up immediately and the temperature will come down. And then, you will see it that very quickly, those graphs change, right? Because it evaporates and water drizzles through and the temperature comes up again. And if temperatures goes up and down and up and down and up and down, I mean, even as humans, we don't like that, right? So we get either lazy, or if it gets too warm, we even perish, right? So I mean, that is why we have been able to do it. We stabilize the soil ecosystem. We lower the temperature by having a constant, better water retention level in the soil, and that allows for crop growth even in the challenging conditions of summertime in an environment like this.
Thanks, Ole. We have a broad question, which I'm probably going to leave to the end, but a very interesting one on the technology aspect. So we have Eldar, who says that the main solution that the technology solves is water retention in the upper soil layers. But how is the soil fertilized? Was there any development in this direction? I think that's an interesting point.
It's definitely an interesting point, because water retention alone is not going to help you achieve the results. I mean, soil is a complex ecosystem. It's about the soil biology as well, and it's also about the nutrients that are available in the soil, and about making sure that those nutrients are not just being applied, but actually available to the plants. So it's a complex area. But the thing with applying our technology to soils, is really changing some fundamentals of the soil structure. People who are familiar with sort of the soil chemistry and the science of things will refer to this as the CEC, the cationic exchange capacity. And if you think about every kind of particle in the world, they have some kind of a physical property, like a positive or a negative charge. And charges are important, right? Because equal charges will oppose each other. Like if you try to take magnets and put them together on the wrong side, you will not be able to do that. They will push away. But opposite charges will attract each other and stick together like glue. So if you imagine you increase the charge level of the soil so that you have this magnetic effect to retain not just water, but also key cations and nutrients, you will hold better onto the nutrients and make more plant available nutrients and food in the soil. You will be able to reduce both the cost and the inputs of things like fertilizer. but you still need to understand what is the composition of my current soil, what nutrients are available there, what am I going to be planting, because different plants need a different diet, so to speak. Those things you still need to manage. I mean, even in the project that we saw here with this summer crop validation that we did in the beginning, while preparing the land and treating it, we did apply organic or manure type of nutrients to start this project, and then we focused very much on measuring the both water efficiency and nutrient efficiency, which is important.
Thanks, Lolly. It just goes to show that there is a lot that goes behind, getting food on the table and into the markets. We're quickly running short of time, and we're getting swamped with questions, so I'm going to probably have to skip a few, unfortunately. Probably go to the next, skip a few. An interesting one from Hidia. Hidia's been asking quite a few questions, but this one seems interesting. How about the importance of biopesticides, and how can we reduce the usage of biopesticides? What is the importance of the use of biopesticides? If you could care to provide your insights on that.
So I think I think this is actually a question where we could create a debate where we could talk all afternoon, really. But let me sort of narrow it down a little bit and really say that I think it's versus chemical pesticides. I think anything that sort of takes us away from the use of too much chemicals for the soil is going to be a positive thing. When it comes to really looking at sort of soil health in general, I think it's us humans, we tend to look for quick fixes. We want sort of a pill for this and a tablet for that, and then a cure for this and that very, very quickly and easily. But nature really has its own magic and its own powers. So I think you need to look at this more holistically and look as well at what are the positive and negative impacts of this. If you look at your soil, I mean, 95% of all biological life forms on Earth may exist in our soil in terms of, microbes and all kinds of living bacteria, positive ones, good ones, bad ones, the ones that create pesticides and problems, while you have the ones that make, break down nutrients into things that the plants can actually use and stuff like that. It's like there's like this enormous, almost life form of wars and hard workers that work hard to put food on our table that are down there. So we need to really start to look at working more in, some people see in balance with nature. I say more in harmony. It's more like a concert with nature to understand, what the impacts of what we are doing really are. Let's not just look at a quick fix solution for things, but understand the complexity of the soil ecosystem and the plant ecosystem and how everything works in harmony, rather than going for sort of a quick fix solution. Let's apply this and then we've solved that problem, because then another problem came up down the road and then we do another prescription for that one and for that one and that one again. That's not the way to go about things.
No, that's a very interesting take, and that's something that we need to grow more and more wary of in the current day and age. Definitely. We have a question from Sadru Dada, who is inquiring if the liquid clay is organic or if it has any chemicals in it. Probably an add-on from the previous question. Yeah.
I mean, clay is not an organic material, right? So clay is a mineral. So I guess, the question would be, are you adding other things to it? Mm-hmm. And we have the opportunity. We are actually focused on creating a liquid for specific reasons. Because I see there are other questions in the panel here as well about polymers and maybe biochar and other things that also are great soil amendments and soil products. But our reason for focusing on a liquid approach is to have a non-intrusive approach. to be able to use the force of gravity to get the elements that we want to enrich the soil with into the soil without having to dig, till, or do a intervention of the soil. Because even, as I said, even a desert area, desert sands and soils are fragile ecosystems, and if you dig and till and turn around things, you may damage even more, root systems, filaments, hypnea, fungi systems, and these wonderful earthlings that are down there in our soil. At the same time, all soils will also have quite a bit of carbon that is locked down into the soil. And carbon, before it reaches a fixed stage, is quite unstable as well. So when you turn around to put other products down there and you dig up that soil to put something down where you believe the root zone is going to be, you have a big risk of actually exposing a lot of that carbon to the surface air. And when carbon reacts with oxygen, it becomes CO2, carbon dioxide, and it escapes into the atmosphere, which is what we don't want, right? Both for the carbon cycle, and carbon is also a very good thing to hold onto water and create a fertile environment for the land as well. So that's why we are focused on a liquid approach, to get a liquid where we can use we break down the clay particles so that they self-percolate into the soil. And we are not applying anything else than these mineral materials. We may compose these clays depending on the soil, but we also have the opportunity to add other things to the liquid, which could be a transport mechanism for getting other nutrients and things into it. But by itself, as long as it's a pure mineral-based product with water, oxygen, and mineral, I would say it's ready to be organic certified, but it's not organic in itself. But it doesn't contain anything that is going to be conflicting with cultivating organic crops.
Unfortunately, we're really running short of time, so I'm probably going to have to pick and choose one final question before we wrap up. Probably going to go with a technical one, since it's very rare where we can get bright minds like yourself. So we have a question from Uni, who would like to ask, does the clay protect the crop from salinity stress?
Yeah, I mean, we have made some interesting findings in the validations that we have done to see that there are things that starts to happen with when you're changing the cationic exchange capacity in the soil and the interaction between plants and the entire soil ecosystem. What we have seen is that we have seen a quite significant reduction of salinity, especially in the top 10 and the top 10 to 30 centimeters of the soil. We've also seen, an increase of salinity tolerance to plants and crops on treated LNC treated plots compared to the controls. More research is definitely going into this area because salinity is really a big challenge in many countries around the world. But we have some really promising findings so far in terms of increasing salinity tolerance for plants with this type of treatment, and seeing a reduction of the salinity in the topsoil levels.
Fantastic. I'm going to throw in one final question here before we wrap up, and it's going to be a two-pronged question, if I may. Of course, you have been working in Europe as well, and you have been working very closely with the Biosalan Center, and I believe you have been doing a few pilots with the Ministry of Climate Change as well. What is your experience with the partnerships that you've had here and the support that you received, probably from not just a pilot perspective, but you must be undergoing a few checks and balances from a regulatory perspective as well. And probably, we'd like to wrap it up with what your words of wisdom would be to upcoming entrepreneurs in this new segment, where we know that food security is not just about crops. Of course, there are other segments as well, agri-tech, food waste, and so on. So just to wrap, to close with a few words of wisdom for the new entrepreneurs coming to this space and who really want to make a change like you do, for the future, for the current generation and for the future as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for those questions. To start with sort of the partnerships and sort of the way of working with the local system. I mean, the skill sets, the knowledge, the experience from the Biosaline Center, their International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, has been, really, really amazing because, you start with defining a project, right? And you want to validate something. And then you start putting up some assumptions that or hypotheses that you want to prove, right? And then you start to figure out, well, a lot of other things happened during this validation project. And then you say that, well, I mean, what I've learned from this is that I look at it, we opened this, door to an area that we thought there was so much knowledge inside, and it's ended up being a universe behind that door. And then we start to dive deeper in and deeper in and deeper in. I mean, like this year, we started to look into the salinity stuff. Then we saw a faster buildup of soil organic matter, which also means soil carbon. And then suddenly you start to see, well, what could this mean in terms of soil's carbon sequestration, and what you then need to do to work to get sort of aligned with international standards for soil for carbon trading, for example, the gold standard, the Vera standard, etc., so that you can actually start to create business models around this as well. So I think the support there has been tremendous. The interest and the embrace that we've gotten from everything from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, the Ministry of Food Security, the Expo 2020 or now 2021, the Expo Live team, etc. I mean, it's really been amazing in terms of making sure that we focus on the right things and open doors to make sure that you don't get stuck in the wrong place with things. So we're very, very grateful for that, and for doing these kind of pilots. I mean, we could not have done that in Norway, where we came from, right? We don't have, fortunately, there are no deserts in Norway as of yet, and we hope that we will be part of making sure that never happens. So from those perspectives, it's been a wonderful host nation and a very good aligned ecosystem around it. As to words of wisdom for entrepreneurs, I think one of the words that I want to share there is that whatever you do, I mean, you have to start out with an idea and find a problem that you are truly passionate about solving, and then make sure that you really fall in love with the problem, and that you stay focused on solving the problem. Because too many entrepreneurs that I meet, they fall in love with their own solution instead of the problem, right? They get so like, this is the way, this is my product. And if you fall in love with your solution, then you will miss out on the bigger picture and the world, and suddenly the opportunity didn't even match with what people needed or the world needed, etc. So word number one is fall in love with the problem and stay focused on solving the problem, and always align that with your solution. Do not fall in love with the nitty-gritty parts of your solution. And then have a vision. Think big, start small, act fast, and then design to scale exponentially. And stay committed. Understand that you need to have people around you. You need someone who can build your idea and dream, and you need someone who can sell it, and you need someone who can take care of the money, and you need to partner, because nobody can do it all by themselves.
Thank you so much, Ole. I mean, we're unfortunately really run short of time. We can go on about this, I guess, for hours and still just scratch the surface. But thank you so much for your time and sharing your great knowledge here on this forum. I just want to, again, remind our participants that the presentation will be shared. Of course, we need to have the final permission from Ole if we were to share this video as well. If you do have the permission, it will go on to our YouTube channel, which we will share the link to our participants as well. But thank you all for participating. And unfortunately, we have a lot of questions still streaming in. We have to wrap this up here. But along with the presentation, we will share a link to Desert Control's website, who Ole is the CEO of, and his potential email address on there as well for any further questions that you may have. Once again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much, Ole, for your support in nature, for your knowledge. Hope we can continue to engage in the future as well, and hopefully COVID regulations and the virus itself, stems down, and we get to see her in the UAE very, very soon. I know we've got the similar background, but to all the participants know we're not in the same country or in the same room. We're across the globe, but look forward to welcoming Ole to the UAE very, very soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and thank you once again to Ole for being a part of this platform. Thanks very much, and we will wrap this up here. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.